Hey everybody, welcome back to Workshop 101. My name is Noah. Good to see you all again. Very excited today because today we are going to do our first critique. As some of you may know, about a week and a half ago I got a copy of a book by John Gardner that is called The Art of Fiction. I've been reading this to help me construct my own novel, and I've gotten through the first chapter or so. I know it's coming along a little slow, and what I want to do is, as I read these crafts books, I want to use the lessons that I glean from them as a way to look at your work as you send it to me. Apply the lessons that I've learned to the work that you are creating. In the first chapter of John Gardner's book, he talks about verisimilitude or realism, and the different techniques that you can use to create something that's realistic. One of the chief techniques that he suggests that we use as writers is the use of concrete detail. In his mind, detail equals credibility. We want to export a particular experience to our reader, and we want to make it seem like we know what we're talking about, or rather, we want to make it seem like our narrator knows what he or she is talking about. And the way that you do that in Gardner's mind is by using concrete detail. Here's what Gardner has to say about detail. On page 24, he says, "The writer must present moment by moment concrete images drawn from a careful observation of how people behave. And he must render the connections between moments, the exact gestures, facial expressions, or turns of speech that, within any given scene, move human beings from emotion to emotion, from one instant in time to the next." He goes on to say that the reader is regularly presented with proofs in the form of closely observed details that what is said to be happening is really happening. Now think about that. A story without details is a story without proof, a story without credibility. If the reader is to be transported from wherever it is that they're sitting with their book into the book or into the character's mind, you have to give the narration credibility or details. Gardner goes on to say that if we carefully inspect our experience as we read, we discover that the importance of physical detail is that it creates for us a kind of dream, a rich, vivid play in the mind. We read a few words at the beginning of the book or the particular story, and suddenly we find ourselves seeing not words on a page, but a train moving through Russia, an old Italian crying, or a farmhouse battered with rain. So, as I got some submissions, I started to read with this in mind. One submission that I got by Toby Simpich is the first chapter to his book, The Blood Gem. We're going to look at a paragraph, about one paragraph from Toby's book. And first, I'm going to read it to you as he sent it to me, his first draft, which has great opportunities in it. As we read along together, think about opportunities for Toby to insert details to give this story more credibility. He's done it in several places. Also look out for those as well. Just a little bit of context for Toby's novel. His novel is called The Blood Gem, and it takes place, at least at first, in a deteriorating kingdom. It is a city of desperate people, a city of massive disrepair. And the protagonist, Sharkus, is one of those desperate people. He is a thief on the run. At this point in the novel, he's just made it through a tense interrogation in which the gatekeepers grant him passage through the city walls. Let's pick up from there. "I see nothing wrong with this man, other than he is quite stupid and absent-minded. Let him through." This gave Sharkus a deep feeling of relief, and he was soon collecting his things back into the bag and had reattached his knife and sword to the withering rope belt. The moment he was ready, he stepped out of the crumbling building and started toward the gates slowly, as to show that he had nothing to hide. This was when his eyes finally fell upon the gate. He saw a woman speaking to one of the guards that had stayed behind. He knew immediately who she was and what she was doing. In horror, Sharkus turned and started walking back further into the city. He supposed that if he hurried, he could make it across the city and leave through the eastern gate before everything began to add up to them. But to his dismay, he hadn't gone 20 steps before the gate watchmen had put 2 and 2 together and were already attempting to reapprehend him. Soon Sharkus was sprinting through the streets as fast as he could move, with them not far behind and gaining slowly. He was racking his brain, trying to think of a way that he could make it out without having to use his backup plan. But this was in vain, for he knew his only chance was to get out through the eastern gate. So he ran through the main street, which was somewhat crowded, but not enough to give Sharkus any sort of cover, but enough that they made it hard for Sharkus to navigate the street. He was forced to take a few detours and was never able to shake his pursuers. Pretty exciting stuff. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of tension, a lot of suspense, and I think this passage has a lot of potential. There are a couple moments here where Toby has really done a good job of establishing credibility through detail. For example, if we look at the end of the first sentence, this gave Sharkus a deep feeling of relief, and he was soon collecting his things back. So this is the kind of concrete detail that Gardner is talking about. We're able to see that he's collecting his things back into the bag and had reattached his knife and sword to his withering rope belt. Those are all details that we can sense with our touch, our sight, things that really establish the kind of person that Sharkus is. We can tell that he's a down-and-out kind of guy. He feels the need to protect himself. It also tells us a lot about the world that he lives in. It's a dangerous world. It's a world in which he has to carry a knife and a sword. And clearly, he's in a bad spot. And I think this is one of the most detailed moments in this paragraph. And kudos to Toby for doing this, because it does tell us a lot about who this character is. That being said, there are many moments in this paragraph where Toby has an opportunity to elaborate on all the detail that we might benefit from, that might lift us from the text in front of us and into this befallen kingdom. One example that came to mind was at the end of this paragraph, the sentences that start with, "So he ran through the main street, which was somewhat crowded, but not enough to give Sharkus any sort of cover, but enough that they made it hard for Sharkus to navigate the street. He was forced to take a few detours and was never able to shake his pursuers." This is a perfect opportunity to fill this world with actual, concrete things. So he ran through the main street, which was somewhat crowded, but not enough to give Sharkus any sort of cover. Alright, so immediately, I want to know what this street looks like. I want to know who's in the street. I want to know what crowded looks like in a kingdom like this. I want to know what kinds of obstacles Sharkus might have to overcome, or even throw behind him to possibly, throw off his pursuers. I want to know what the buildings look like on this main street. There may have been some explanation at the beginning of the novel, but in this moment, we really want to get a sense of where he is. So again, establish credibility through detail. Here's what I've done. So he ran through the main street. The vendors manned their carts, barking prices and the deals of the day. Children chased one another across the road. Sharkus ran hard, shoving whatever he could to the ground behind him, barrels, troughs, buckets, carts, but the guard leapt over each obstacle and closed in. I haven't made any drastic changes here. All I've really done is I've inserted physical objects, physical details, details that we can sense to establish a credibility here, to establish what this world looks like. And hopefully it transports us even deeper into the world that Toby has established here. So, basic but very, very important lesson here. Details equal credibility. Details equal realism. Then you get into the business of figuring out how to phrase those details. What kind of quality of word, what kind of diction you should be using to describe those details. For those of you who haven't listened to the second podcast, we talk all about diction and how choosing the right words to describe things makes a huge difference in the experience for the reader. So bear that in mind, Toby. Keep up the good work. I'm going to send this to you and some general comments on how you can strengthen what you've already got. I think you're off to a great start. And please do not forget to submit your writing. More to come next week. Submit at wordshop101@gmail.com. Please go to wordshop.com for all the details as well as the Facebook page. Great talking to you all. I'll see you soon.